Good morning. This is Rajarao Konduri, IBM YP Coordinator, Genesis Global School. I welcome you all for the short virtual presentation or orientation on IBM YP program at Genesis Global School. The IB program, when they started the curriculum, they started with diploma program, which is basically meant for class 11th and 12th students. And then after the diploma program, they realized the importance that they should map it down. They should map the curriculum down to the lower classes. And with this intention, they had started IB middle year program, which is also abbreviated as IBMYPC. We talk a little more about the logo that you see of IBMYP. And lastly, then they realized the importance of further mapping down of the curriculum so that the kids who come to class 6 are prepared, that is MYP, are prepared for IB middle year program. So in order to prepare the students for middle year program, they decided to map down the curriculum and skills and concepts, and they started something called IBPYP, that is IB primary year programs. So let's talk a little about IB middle year program, that is IBMYP at Genesis Global School. As I mentioned that the curriculum of International Baccalaureate, that is IB, started with diploma, and gradually they started mapping down and realizing and mapping down the curriculum to the primary level. If you look at the slide, on the extreme left, you have in orange color primary year program. Most of the schools across the world offer this program for the students from class 1 to class 5, whereas the middle year program is offered for class 6 to class 10, and is meant for basically class 6 to 10, whereas diploma program is meant for class 11th and 12th. So they are abbreviated respectively as IBPYP, IBMYP, and IBDP. In the Genesis Global School, we offer IBPYP, that is IB primary year program, for class 1 to class 5 kids. Once the children pass out class 5, they are said to have been graduated from primary, and they are promoted to middle year program, that is class 6. In Genesis, we offer middle year program for class 6, 7, and 8. They are respectively termed as MYP1, MYP2, and MYP3. It means that they do 3 years of middle year programs, and then they move on to MYP integrated IGCSE program, all right, which is 9th and 10th. And after 9th and 10th, they move to diploma program, which is 11th and 12th. The one which you see on the extreme right, career related program, which offered in 2006, and this is offered in some schools across the world, and the Genesis is not one which offers this particular program as of now. Let's see what MYP is and what are its requirements. The question arises, why MYP is essential? If you look at the number of schools, let's have a look at the quantitative data of number of IB schools in different zones or different regions of the world. The entire world is divided into following 3 zones: the Americas, all the American countries, Latin American countries. Second is Africa, Europe, and Middle East. They are second region, and the third region is Asia Pacific, which includes India, China, Sri Lanka, etc. So if you look at the number of schools in different zones, then is gradually increasing across the country. If you look at the number of MYP schools in the region which are authorized or like this, and middle year MYP there are a number of schools which are IB candidate school, and they also are in different regions. IBA stands for IB Americas, IB Africa, Europe, and Middle East, and IBAB means IB Asia Pacific. So there are 16% schools which are still MYP candidate schools, and they are gradually increasing year by year. MYP schools by region, if you look at the number of if you look at the IB, this light yellow color, these are the number of schools in IB Asia Pacific region. So the number of IB schools are gradually increasing across the world. Now in MYP, there are 8 subject areas These 8 subject areas are language and literature, which is basically in English in our country, individuals and societies, which is integrated history, geography, and environmental science, mathematics, which is offered only at one level, simple maths, and sciences, we offer integrated sciences for MYP 1, 2, and 3, and physical and health education, which is called PHE, language acquisition, which is basically second language, you can say. Like in our school, we offer Hindi, German, French, and Spanish. The students will be given an option to choose one of these language acquisition subjects. Either a child can go for Hindi or English, Spanish, or French or German. Arts, basically comprising of visual arts and performing arts. Visual arts is basically drawing, painting, and performing arts is different forms of arts which are performed on stages. It can be instrumental, it can be vocal, and it can be dance. Indeed, all these. So a child needs to do all these forms of arts under this subject. Lastly is design. The design is basically, currently we are offering design as integrated design, so which is basically product design and digital design are clubbed together to constitute this particular subject of school design. So we offer 8 subject areas, as you can see: language, literature, individuals and societies, mathematics, sciences, physical and health education, language acquisition, arts, and design. Christian studies is not offered in our country, most of the countries, especially in Asia Pacific. Coming to what are the different words and terminologies that you require to be a little familiar with, because when the kids come, when the teachers talk to you, so when you see their assessments, when you look at their notes, when you look at the textbooks, you come across certain terms. These are important terms that you gradually get familiarized with, and the students get familiarized within first 1 week to 2 weeks span of time. These are key concepts. They are abbreviated as KC. Related concepts, they are abbreviated as RC. Global context, it is abbreviated as GC. Approaches to learning, that is abbreviated as ATL. Statements of inquiry, which is SOI. And lastly is inquiry questions. And let's explore some of these which are very important to all of us. First is key concepts. Is basically overarching idea. It is timeless. It doesn't have any subject constraints, and it actually covers a broad concept of the topic that you're covering, and irrespective of the subject. If you look at there are 16 key concepts in IB and YP. The 16 concepts are, as you can see on the screen, aesthetics, connections, global interactions, creativity, systems, relationships, etc. Now, all of these 16 concepts, there are certain key concepts which are meant specifically for some subjects, but there is no as such constraints. Now, if you look at this table, there are 3 key concepts which have been highlighted. I picked up this key concept table from Science Guide of MYP. Now, these 3 key concepts which are highlighted have to be used for sciences, and if the teacher wants to use other key concepts as well during his teaching from IB MYP 1, that is class 6, to IB MYP 3, that is class 8, the teacher is free to pick up any of these key concepts. But a science teacher must cover these key concepts at least once in the MYP years 1, 2, 3, that is class 6 to 8. So, example, if I choose a topic where I am addressing science from culture point of view, so I can pick up culture as also key concept. Now, let me give one simple example of how does this key concept signify in the teaching learning process. If I am picking up a topic where we talk about the environmental changes are happening, or say example, change is happening. So the word change is just not applicable in sciences, but you can see change is applicable in the field of economics as well. Change is applicable in the field of arts as well. The different forms of art, the way they are changing. Change is applicable in all other subject areas as well. So that is how it is. There is no restriction on these key concepts of subjects. Let's take this example, change, and understand how change can be employed in science for a moment. if I'm covering a topic, say example, changing environment, all right, environmental science under science. So, or say biodiversity I'm talking about. So the change is reflecting across. So when I'm teaching my class, if I decided to go for change as a key concept for the unit, so my topics would have the changes across last 10 years or last 20 years of biodiversity of one particular country, or effect of change in biodiversity of one country or one place on the other place. So when you're covering this change is employed just not for in the context of a time, but also is applicable in context of a region. It can be employed. While teaching this, I can bring in the concept of environmental science. I can bring in the concept of how different geographical conditions affected that change, how technological advancement has affected change in the biodiversity of that country. So the word change is used in such a way that I can wrap I can touch upon different subject areas, keeping my entire focus on my particular subject I intend to cover. So I hope I could slightly explain what change or what key concept and how is it used in a class. Let's move on to the next terminology of IB and YP, that is related concept. Related concepts are highly subject specific. If you look at the table, is written related concept in chemistry. I'm a man of chemistry, so I picked up this example, easy for me to explain. So these are some key related concepts in chemistry. So related concept in one subject is difficult to be employed in other subject. So therefore there is a subject bound. These are subject bound. It means that related concept applied in one subject cannot be applied with the same ease in other subjects, and that's why the related concepts are said to be term specific, subject specific. And therefore, these related concepts which are chosen by a teacher in a class would help to explore the topic in depth because it becomes more subject specific. Let me give an example here. If I have chosen models as related concepts, so I can talk about how different models help us understand the underlying principles of the natural phenomena in the world. Say example, if I picked up the atomic structure and models as a related concept, I can talk about how do different models help us understand what we observe. Alright, so the model sense, we have Rutherford's atomic model, then we have Niels Bohr's atomic model, Sommerfeld's atomic model. So these models were modified over a period of time, and how did this help us in understanding the underlying principles of the observation that a scientist makes, and how does understanding a model helps us to understand or explore the concepts in chemistry. So these terms which you see as related concepts are more subject embedded. I hope I'm clear about it. Coming to third aspect is global context. It is very important that children see the connection of what they are studying inside the classroom with the outside world. In a simple language, it is important for us to contextualize the significance of the topic being taught in class. I give simple example. Assume that now if you see there are 6 global contexts in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these 6 global contexts are common for all subjects, unlike the related concept which is highly subject specific. Global context, there is no constraint that science teachers have to pick up this, cannot pick up this, or language teachers can pick up only fairness and development but not orientation, space and time. So it means the global context are not subject specific. It is used by all subject teachers. Question that which global context suits or fits best into the topic is decided by the department as a whole in a collaborative sessions. So let me give an example. So what does it help us in? It will help students to know that how what I have learned in class is visible in practical field, real world. So that is why I said these global contexts, which are abbreviated as GC, help us contextualize the topics and establish the connection of the subject content with the real life scenes or situations. So I'll give a small example here. Example, if I pick up, say, scientific and technical innovation, just an example. So how did scientific and technical innovation help us easing the life of a common man? All right. So if I talk about that, how scientific and technical advancement has helped us understanding a concept of scientific phenomena. How did development of technology helped us making a life easier and better? How did scientific and technical advancement has helped us in combating a disease, say example. So when we choose a topic and keep KCN, that is key concept and related concept and global context in mind, that gives us the entire picture of the topic. In other words, when we choose a topic, we keep these three factors in mind so that we know where to start and where to reach by the end of the unit. So KC will tell us the broad concept, related concept will tell us the subject specific concept, and global context will tell us how do I make it look significant to the students by establishing its link with real life situations. And this is how these three are always talked about by the teacher before the commencement of any new topic. A time comes when the students start understanding the importance of key concept, related concept, and global context in such a way that they start selecting on their own sometimes. They start suggesting teachers also as to what key concept can best fit to this particular unit which we are going to cover next, or related concept and global context. It is a different thing, but it requires a lot of planning, but at least kids understand at least why this particular KC, RC, and GC was chosen for this particular unit. So they start finding connection between these three terms with the topic. I hope I could clarify what I said to some extent. Let's move on to the next. This is an example of globalization and sustainability. And under every global context, there are six, there are certain areas you explore. So example, I gave an example of technical advancement helped in easing our life. All right. So look at that, how and what all areas can we explore under globalization and sustainability. All right. These are called explorations. All right. So we choose one of them, preferably one of them, so that topic remains focused, and explore the topic, contextualize the topic. Example, the interconnectedness of human-made systems and communities, the relationship between global and local processes, like how does affect in a local environment or local place can affect the other aspect of the world. All right, how local experiences mediate the global, the opportunities and tension provided. For example, the current situation that you see, the name of scientific and technical innovation, as it is said, I'm just not saying this is a confirmation of what I'm saying. Like America is blaming China. The effect in China has impacted the whole world. So you can see the clear connection between the wrong deed of one country can affect the entire world. So this kind of the relation between local change and the global that is causing an impact on the global, economy or health or etc. can be discussed using this kind of topic. So now the children, for example, we pick up the COVID-19. So under the opportunities and tension provided by, so the teachers can discuss, students can discuss, what do you think that this change in world scenario is going to lead, what it is going to lead to, what kind of tension it is going to lead to, and what can this further become as a consequence of the world that world may have to face. So it's basically you're showing the world interconnectedness. Similarly, identities and relationship, these are the exploration, and you get to hear and see these exploration for all 6 global contexts. Right. The next is, the important thing is certain skills. They are just not subject specific, but they are such skills which are always important for a child to be called lifelong learners, so that they can employ these skills anywhere. I give a simple example. If a child knows how to do research, and what are the different aspects of research, how to produce a small piece of research work from this age onwards, and if he or she chooses to go for a research, or supposedly he joins an organization and is supposed to be putting up a presentation, the child knows that these are the skills which I've learned or acquired being in IB, which I can use to put up a good presentation. So the skills can be not just research skill, but it can be a good communication skill as well. All right. So there are certain skills which we all require, and we need to inculcate these skills in students using our subjects. And these are called ATL skills, approaches to learning. All right. So there are 5 ATL skills: thinking skills, social skills, communication skills, self-management skills, and research skill. Every skill has got a cluster of certain sub-skills. Let's call them. Thinking skill, it can be critical thinking, creative thinking, and transfer. Basic meaning of transfer is applying the learned knowledge, concepts, and skills in a given situation. All right. So this is basically application of the skills and knowledge. Second is social skills, which is very important, collaborative skills. This brings in knowingly, unknowingly, a lot of subsets of skills. Example: perseverance, listening ability, respect towards each other. At the same time, it helps in knowing as to how, when to communicate and what to communicate. Third is communication skill. It's needless to say the importance of communication skill. Under communication, we not only try to inculcate the skill of speaking, but also skill of listening, which is very essential. The communication skills, through communication skills, the teachers consciously, implicitly sometimes, and explicitly sometimes develop the skill of knowing as to how to negotiate, how to debate, how to put across one's point of view in order to agree or disagree with the point of view of others in the class. So this is very essential. Self-management skill, and the growing requirements or expectations of the world from every individual, this becomes very important. This includes organizational skills, which we know that is very important. Affective skills, basically to do with mindfulness and these kind of skills, how to do the stress management, how to be a mindful. These kind of sub skills are developed under affective skills. We don't say that we are developing these skills, but we plan to develop such kind of skills. All right. And the third is under self-management is the reflection skills. It's basically knowing that how to reflect upon. In order to reflect upon, if you look at that, the self-management skill in turn depends on a critical way of thinking. When you're reflecting upon any content or any presentation or anything that you read, listened, or argued or discussed in a group or individually, then you require to use thinking skill, critical thinking skill, to give quality reflection upon. This quality reflection can be reflection upon one's own learning as well, which is very essential. A child must know that how am I growing, etc. Last is research skill. Under this we have information skill, how to collate information, and similarly media literacy, different kind of IT skills which are developed. Coming to one of the most important aspects of any program, so it is assessment. In MYP, the assessments are purely criteria based. So we have a criteria for each subject, and based on that we assess. So this particular aspect of MYP may require more number of orientation. I'll try my best to put up a small explanation to how we assess in MYP. Basically, there are 3 types of assessments. Formative assessments, this is called assessment for learning, because it only helps, the purpose of formative assessment is to help the child and teacher to know the growth of a child. How much has child learned? What are the strengths of child, and what are the limitations the child requires to be helped furthermore on? Is the purpose of this. The formative assessments are assessed, but they are never marked. It means the formative assessment's purpose is only to give a space, a room for child and teacher to know that after a certain number of lessons, a certain period of time, this is where I stand, this is what I have learned, and these are the things which I need to learn, and these are the areas I need to improve upon. So it's basically the formative assessments will help the teacher to give a very qualitative feedback to the students so that the child knows these are the areas I am good at and these are the areas I can improve upon in order to achieve, now to set a desired target. Coming to the next phase, summative assessment. This is basically assessment of learning. So you have learned now we are going to assess it. This is termed as end of unit assessments in Genesis Global School. So as name indicates, after the end of every unit, the teachers conduct assessment based on the topic or unit, or you can say in simple language, chapter. Summative assessments or end of unit assessments are always assessed and marked as well. It means that the students get some grades or achievement levels in the performance of their end of unit assessments. Let's go ahead now. How do we assess? Depends on the criteria. If you look at that, these are the assessment criteria. All these assessment criteria are indexed as A, B, C, D for all subjects. Language and literature, as you can see, A is termed as analyzing, under B we do organizing, C producing text, sorry, test, and D is using language. Let's look at the science. Under A we have knowing and understanding. We basically test their knowledge and understanding of the subject content. B, inquiring and designing. They have to design something on their own. And C is processing and evaluating. Processing is basically process of data, process of information. And evaluating means evaluating, so how have things gone in the experiments, the strengths, what they have done they think is right, what they think that they could improve. If you look at this, it's similar to ATL skills, reflection skills. And the last one is reflecting on the impact of science. They go through the entire, they know that this is my investigation. I'm giving example, and they reflect upon these are the sources of error. And if I did this experiment again, this is how I'm going to improve these errors. I'll try to overcome these errors. This can also be reflecting on the impacts of science. For example, you are given a COVID-19 situation, and asked, the technological advancement has brought us to stage where we can create something which can perturb the whole world. So what do you think that this COVID-19 or this kind of technological advancement should be stopped or should be allowed to carry on, or there is any other way we can have these kind of technological advancement, but there has to be a check. So you have to give the pros and cons of these kind of technological advancement. So the child actually reflects upon a scientific phenomena or a phenomena which is natural phenomena or scientific phenomena that impacts the local or global community. They may have to talk about pros and cons of that scientific phenomena. How do they themselves perceive this particular phenomena? So they're basically learning again reflection skills through this also. So there are 4 assessment criteria for each subject, as you see on the screen. Your teachers and students, your child will share this with you. Now each criteria, A, B, C, D, a child can score a maximum of 8. You see, this is called achievement level. Say example, I have picked up one particular criteria, say A, for language and literature, assuming. So there are certain points which we expect from students. All right, this particular criteria is from science. Say example, this particular subject, sciences, I have picked up a particular criteria, and the child is assessed on this particular criteria. So there are each one of them is called a strand. I may pick up all 5 strands or any number of strands for this, depending on the requirement of a unit. Say example, I have completed a unit in which I decided to cover strand 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to assess the students only based on 3. These are called strands of that criteria. But when I give them assessment, I further make it task specific. It means that you will have this particular strand, and right opposite to that, I would have another column which will describe what am I expecting from students under this particular strand, and this particular strand. So when I open up this, unpack this, and this, what I get is called task specific rubrics. So whenever a teacher conducts an end of unit assessment, teacher will inform the students, will explain students, these are the strands and this is what I'm expecting from this. These are my expectations from strand 2, these are expectations from strand 3, or whatever strand has been covered. And that is task specific, because the teacher has already planned the task and he knows that what I'm expecting from students under this task. So all these are further unpacked here and they are called task specific rubrics. The children are shared these rubrics and task specific rubric beforehand, so that they know that I need to prepare my unit according to these expectations. They would not know the questions, they would only know the overarching ideas as to what can be expected. Say example, just giving example, if I write under task specific criteria, my task specific criteria is going to come here. If I write, say example, the child must collect sufficient quantitative data. Point 2, the child should write all the units for all, but the child doesn't know which experiment is going to be given. But he knows that whatever experiment is given to him, he has to collect all the quantitative data and make sure that he writes standard units for them all. So he knows the overarching or big expectations, but the moment he gets to see the task, he can easily understand what is expected, because the task specific criteria is also shared with the child. Now, what we do in the end of, I would like to abolish this, or let me go to the next. Now, so under the entire year, criteria A, each strand, criteria B, C, D, each strand is assessed minimum twice. Indeed, teacher assess each criteria, each strand in their subject more than 2 times, right? So based on that, the students are given some assessment. I would rather like to pay your attention only on this end of unit assessment 1 and end of unit assessment 2. Say example, I'm giving a simple example. I request you to ignore this FA1, FA2, because the assessment policy of the school has been changed slightly. So you have end of unit assessment A. Suppose a child gets A under end of unit assessment criteria A, and B under criteria B, suppose child gets 7, and under C the child has got a 7. Under criteria D the child has scored a D. So what is the total of these 4 criteria is written here. So eventually the child has got 6, 7, 7, 6, whatever, and these are totaled up. So it means that the achievement level under A, achievement level under B, achievement level under C, achievement level under D is totaled up, and once they are totaled up, you have to see where does it fall under. For example, the sum of all these, for example, 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7, it comes to be 26, and 26 comes under this range, so the child is assigned a grade 6 under that. May I request you to ignore kindly the end of term assessment, because the school has, as per the changed assessment policy of the school, there won't be any end of term assessment. That is, this aspect will not take place. And FA1, FA2 will happen, but they will not be given any achievement levels. They will only get comments from the teachers. So as I said that, finally the child, Satya, has scored 6 under A, 7 under B, 7 under C, and say 6 under D. We sum up all these things, that comes to be 26, and the teacher finds where does 26 come under. It comes under grade boundary 6. So this is given as a grade to the child in the report card. So, so whether child will fall under this grade or this grade or this depends on what is the total achievement levels of all four criteria in a subject. So the child is scoring is taking assessment under four criteria under every subject, and therefore the total of this will be converted into the grade, and this grade would be reflected, and the achievement levels will also be reflected. In Genesis, these are the subjects we offer. Under language and literature, we offer English. Under language acquisition, we offer one of these. Child can opt for Hindi or French or Spanish or German. Mathematics, standard maths. Integrated science, individual societies, again geography and history together. Physical and health education, which is just not playing games, is beyond playing games. Design, which is integrated design, product design and digital design are integrated and offered as a design subject. Performing arts, the child has to go for dance and music both, and visual art as well. That is drawing, painting is beyond drawing and painting. So the child ideally goes for 8 subject areas. Subject area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and art together as 8. Let's move on now from academics to slightly non-academics, but it's not completely non-academic. It's rooted in academics. Services action, the child has to participate in services action. It is very important for children to empathize the local communities, global communities, through the skills and knowledge they acquire. And for that, the IB/MYP offers services action as important element. So the services action, the detail would be explained to you by the school service coordinator later on. The child has to acquire certain outcomes, learning outcomes. There are 7 learning outcomes. The child either performs or participates in a service activity under this learning outcome, or the second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh. So these are the service learning outcomes. It is again another important element of IB/MYP, that is project. There are 2 projects, community project and personal project. The school students of MYP, when they go to class 9th, they will have to perform, they have to participate in something called personal project, which is mandatory, and the detailed information of this personal project can be shared to you by the IGCC coordinator in her presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to write to the associate coordinator, Ms. Sangeeta Pal. Thank you.